Welcome, everybody, to the Land to Lake Lecture Series with the Cannon River Watershed Joint Powers Organization. I'm Ryan Lerman. I'm the Rice and Steele County Extension Educator for Agriculture and Natural Resources. I want to let everybody know today that this webinar is being recorded. And if you have any questions, just use the Q&A option on Zoom here to ask your questions. That way we can keep track of them and we'll get them answered at the end of the presentations today. For today's webinar, we're talking about aquatic invasive species, and we're joined today by Trevor from Le County, who's going to be representing the Cannon River Watershed Joint Powers Organization, and our main speaker is Rafa with the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to you, Trevor, to kick us off.
Sounds good. All right, let me share my screen here real quick. All right, can everyone see it?
Yep, looks good.
Perfect. All righty. So this is the Cannon River Watershed Joint Powers Organization. I'm Trevor, Water Resources Planner for Le County. So for the Cannon River Watershed, so most of you might be familiar with there, but for those who aren't, we're in southeastern Minnesota. It consists of the following counties. We have Dakota County, Goodhue County, Le County, Rice County, Steele County, and Waseca County. This partner is mainly driven by efforts from the county commissioners, SWCD supervisors, local staff, and state agencies from all of these counties as well. So on the right, they're showing off the area of the Cannon River Watershed. So some little tidbits for the Cannon River Watershed. It consists of 963,717 acres or 1,506 square miles of area. For our land uses, the main one is agricultural, covering 51% of the entire watershed. We do have 10% of the watershed within the metro area as well. For water courses in this watershed, we have 800 linear miles of rivers, with the two main rivers being the Cannon River and the Straight River. Little infographic here showing the coverage of the counties for the watershed. So main counties being Rice County, Steele County, and Goodhue, with their pretty split between Dakota County, Le County, and Waseca County. And then within the watershed itself, there's a few different land use differences. So in the Straight River area, there's more agricultural land. For the Upper Cannon, more towards the metro, there's a lot more lakes and wetlands. Middle Cannon has more urban land uses, and then the Lower Cannon is more forested land area. So for some of the problems that within the watershed, things that we deal with, one of the main ones is fixing erosion. So seen here are a few examples throughout the watershed of different types of erosion, some being gullies within farm fields, some being wind erosion with no soil cover, water erosion from runoff, different kinds of erosion. So a lot of the focus of the watershed is looking to address these erosion problems and other things through a few different practices, best management practices. So we have some non-structural practices, so things like cover crops shown in the bottom left picture and the top left picture. Native shoreline plantings seen on the bottom right, there's a good example of that. Perennial cover, reduced tillage on farm fields, and then just general soil health practices. Here we're going to have a larger example too, and another kind of BMP is structural practices. So we have grade stabilizations, terraces in farm fields, grass waterways, and water and sediment control basins. And then the one shown here is a grassed waterway in construction on a farm field. So with those as well, for fixing erosion, one of the other issues being addressed and looked at through our collaborative efforts is water quality improvement throughout for both our lakes and streams. And so a few different efforts there for trying to address that as well. So doing shoreline surveys, doing septic inventories around the lakes, checking for compliance of systems to make sure they're not impacting groundwater and the lake water itself. Working and developing lake management plans with some of the lake associations in the area, and then assisting with monitoring and testing. So going out and taking water samples during the busy season in the summer and assessing what our lake levels health is at. So another good effort to show off for lake health is these shoreline restorations using native plants. So a lot of shorelines throughout the state of Minnesota may have this problem of having lawns. And so to help the lake health reduce runoff and help with that, the putting in more native plants allows it to absorb more water, again, stop the runoff from going into the lake. So picture here, we have a few pretty good examples of that, of a native shoreline buffer along the lake shores. With that said, for those within the Cannon River Watershed, we do have a native shoreline planting program. So it's a cost share program. So for those applying for it, they're eligible for up to $500 per parcel for planting a minimum of 150 square feet of native vegetation. That cost share can go towards the purchase of plants, the cost for site preparation, and maintenance included for taking care of those plants once they're planted. If you are within the watershed and you're interested in doing this, you can talk to your local SWCD for more information, and they can help you get started, be able to give you recommendations potentially for plants and get you what worksheets you need to fill out and such as. Another effort within the watershed is education and outreach, trying to get the word out to the public for multiple different things. We have a few shown here. So again, going back to some of our practices, things like soil health with cover crops, having the outreach to the farmers and getting collaborative efforts with them to try and go over things like runoff and try and address how having like soil cover can help cover crops and such, explaining the importance of it to them, the impact. Along with that, we also do work with lakeshore owners a lot as well, and again, stress a lot of those native plants, try and get the word out to be able to help improve their lake health, especially for lake owners. A lot of them are very concerned about lake health, and so being able to let them know ways that they can help and assist them to improve their lake health is a good effort for education and outreach that we strive for. A more recent thing for lake monitoring. So the Cannon River Watershed is organizing to collect lake data throughout the entire watershed. Currently, main focus is in LeSueur County. There's approximately, as of this year, 8 lakes that we're sampling, getting consistent data. So the effort right now is to work with all the counties within the watershed, try and get more lakes to be able to be assessed and figure out the trends for them, to be able to kind of assess the lake health and change priorities should they be needed. The focus on that being to have more years of data. To give a good example, the data that was taken in LeSueur County, in the year 2024, we did have flooding throughout the watershed and focused around the Waterville area as well. And so the lake sampling around that area, there was a large spike. So having data like that where it's obviously skewed, the more years you have, the better you can get an idea for like a general trend. And so the effort there is then to keep getting more lakes signed up for that and keep them consistently monitoring. And with that, that's kind of our basic background information of the Cannon River Watershed. So with that, I will hand it over to Raphael for our main presentation today, going over aquatic invasive species. I believe you're muted, Raphael.
Thank you. I think, let me try to share my screen now. Screen 2. Okay. Can everybody see well?
Yeah, looks good.
All right. Well, yeah, thank you for having me. My name is Rafael Contreras Rangel. I work for the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources as the AIS Prevention Planner. And today I'm going to talk to you about invasive species. So my goal today is not necessarily to go over identifying two wild species that you might have in Ross County. At the end, I'm going to give you some resources because I will spend a lot of time trying to help identify those. But I think time is better well spent to just help you understand what is an invasive species, what it means here in Minnesota, what we're doing about it here in the Minnesota DNR, and since I know that there's some lake associations present, how you can become more involved. Let's see. All right. So invasive species, what does that mean? Native, non-native, invasive. So a native species is a species that's living where it is found naturally. So for example, the raft cruise that we have here, this one, the range is northern Minnesota into Canada. So they've been here for a long time. And non-native species is one that's introduced or moved by human activities to a location where they do not naturally occur. So right here, we have the ringneck pheasant. It was introduced to the US, so it wasn't naturally living here. And then the third one, it's an invasive species. So this is a non-native species, so something that was brought in here that's occurring lands or waters causing ecological, recreational, economic, and or harm to human health. So this one right here, this is the European or common starling. It was introduced in the 1890s in Central Park and is now one of the worst invasive species that we have here. And this is important just because we use these definitions in our statutes, which is why I wanted to start with that. Okay, so talking about statutes, so these are all defined in section 84D. So as mentioned, these are the species that, non-native species that cause or may cause economic or environmental harm or harm to human health. And two, threatens or may threaten natural resources or the use of natural resources in the state. So within invasive species in Area 4D, there's 4 classifications of non-native species. One of them, and the main one, is prohibited. So for the prohibited invasive species, you cannot own this, you cannot have this, you cannot transport it, you cannot sell it. So we just do not want it in the state. It is completely prohibited. Some of the examples is curly-leaf pondweed, irrigation water milfoil, flowering rush. All 3 of these are in the watershed, Rice County. Starry stonewort, zebra mussels. That's also zebra mussel is also there. And starry stonewort in particular is one that you all should be watching out for. It's kind of a newer one. It's an algae. So at the end, if we have time, I can talk a little bit more about that one. The second classification is regulated invasive species. So these ones, they're not allowed to be released into the environment, but people, because they're regulated, they can be sold and transported. So some of these examples, and you can think about the water garden hobby. So water hyacinth is one of the ones that can be sold, and you can have them in your pond, but you cannot release them out into the lakes. Yellow iris, common carp, and we're all familiar with goldfish. Unregulated, so these are species that we don't really work with them in the invasive species program, but they're worked somewhere else. So like fisheries works with them and they have them in their laws. So that's why they're unregulated. So examples are the brown trout, coho salmon, chinook salmon, and the rainbow trout. Unlisted non-native species are just species that we just don't have any laws for them. They're not really mentioned anywhere. So they're not listed right now. If all of a sudden, kind of like the example that we have here, this is prickly water lily. We found this in 2023. It was unlisted. We found it. We saw that it had some invasive tendencies. So we started the process to try to list it. So now what makes an invasive species invasive? So there's 4 different things that we use to classify a species and invasive species. The number 1, it has to have a high reproductive rate. So as an example is zebra mussels, it can just a few individuals can just produce thousands into the environment. Second is a generalist. They can tolerate a variety of habitats. That's what makes us invasives, because they can survive the cold, the warmth. They're just really good at surviving in a lot of different places. Number three is that they compete aggressively for resources. They start out competing other organisms. As you can see, kind of like in the third picture, that zebra mussels basically growing on top of a crayfish. They grow on anything, and the other organism gets displaced as a result. And the fourth one is a lack of natural enemies in the new ecosystem. So again, zebra mussel as an example, it's really difficult for fish to eat them, so they don't really have a natural predator, which they're not able to keep the population down. So they just can explode in population numbers. So now we're going to go into the effects of AIS. So AIS can have an effect in the ecology. As I mentioned, they can compete with many other organisms and displace them, especially native species. And in turn, they can reduce the quality and the quantity of habitat and alter the ecosystem processes. So an example of that is when you have a curly-leaf pondweed, Eurasian water milfoil, you just have them growing in the lake. They start outcompeting all of the other species that were there. For recreation, again, with that same example, where you have these plants that kind of just grow everywhere in the lake, it's really hard to be able to use your boat. The motor gets stuck, all that stuff that is not fun to happen to you. Economics, zebra mussels is a good example for this one, especially if you have like tubery going out into the lakes, because they can actually go in and they start blocking those, and it takes a lot of money to be able to replace those. They get on people's boats. Any sort of equipment, once they grow on it, they degrade it, and you have to replace those. Human health. So a good example for this one, once you have like those big mats of invasive species, once they die off, they can create algal blooms, and those can be toxic, not just for other organisms, but also for humans. Invasive species, we are really familiar with the pathway. They have different pathways, and we're really familiar with the recreational watercraft one. So the clean, drain, and dry, just going from lake to lake on boats. That's one of the pathways, recreational watercraft. So boaters, paddlers, anglers, those are the ones that have to worry about that. Another pathway is like bait. If you're a fisherman and you buy bait, sometimes those can have invasive species. Sometimes people don't know how to identify them, and they make their way into bait. So that's why we tell people not to release bait, because sometimes they can have invasive species. Gear and equipment, again, with fishermen up north. So not in Rice County and this watershed, but that's more up north, where you have spiny waterfly. So when you go fishing up there, sometimes spiny waterfly, they're tiny organisms. Because of the spines that they have, they get stuck on the line, on the fishing line, and then people don't know about it. They don't check the equipment, and then they go fish another lake. They use that fishing line again, and they get transported to a different lake. So that's gear and equipment. Aquarium trade, this is one that a lot of people don't think about. So you saw me mention goldfish before. So you do have some invasive species that can come in, especially now that things are getting warmer up here in Minnesota. A lot of the tropical fish from down south that people use in their aquariums, we can start seeing them possibly coming invasive species. So that's why that one is an important one. And that's one that we need to look into the future. Same thing as the aquarium trade, the aquatic plant trade. I did mention some of them before. Water hyacinth, yellow floating heart. Yellow floating heart, we switched it from regulated invasive species to a prohibited invasive species 2 years or last year. So these things keep changing, and which is why it's important for you to keep up to date on the invasive species that are out there. So distribution of aquatic invasive species in Minnesota. So a lot of times, it can be really difficult sometimes to deal with invasive species, especially if you're next to a lake and you see that there's a new invasive species in your lake. But it is important to know how spread out they are. So only about 8% of Minnesota lakes, of the 11,000, close to 12,000 lakes are out there, only 8% of them are in the infested water list. So there's actually not that many, and that's why it's really important for us to keep getting acquainted with invasives, to keep working on prevention. Sea mussels are an important one that you all probably have heard of. So only about 4% of the Minnesota lakes are listed in the infested water list. So some of the species that are included in the infested water list. So if you have one of the species in your lakes, it will be classified as infested. So zebra mussels, Eurasian water milfoil, spiny water flea, faucet snails, flowering rush, silver carp, pighead carp, starry stonewort, grass carp, brittle naiad, round goby, ruff, BHS. So this one's important. BHS, that's a virus. So it's not just animals and plants that can be invasive species. Other organisms like viruses can also be an invasive species. White perch, New Zealand mine snail, and the red swamp shrimp. Some of the ones that are in your watershed, Eurasian water milfoil, zebra mussels, flowering rush, and again, one to keep an eye out for is starry stonewort. So now, what are the goals for the invasive species program here at the Minnesota DNR? As I mentioned, there's only 8% of the lakes right now that are infested. So our number one goal is to prevent the introduction of spread of AIS in Minnesota. Number two is to educate the public of AIS laws and best practices through the training and outreach. And three, manage and reduce the impacts caused by AIS to Minnesota ecology, society, and economy through control efforts and research. Number three in the photo, once they're out in the lakes, prevention is the easiest thing. It requires the least money. If the invasive species is not there, we want to focus on prevention because we don't want them there. We want to educate people so that they know what's in their lakes, what's not in their lakes, because if it's not there and people get educated, they can start working on prevention. And also because if it's really important to find these things at the beginning. So if people are educated and they know what they're looking for, we can start managing it pretty quickly. So management is what a lot of counties are involved with, and what a lot of lake associations are involved with to try to get them out of their lake. I'm going to go now more in depth for each of them. So on the prevention side, we do have a watercraft inspection program. It started in 1992, and in 2011, it kind of got strengthened. So under this ones, we can have inspectors out in the lakes, in the water access, and they can visually inspect the equipment, the boats. They're able to actually tell people to not come in if they do find something there. And they can actually ask people to have their watercraft decontaminated before launching. As you can see on the graph here on the right side, in 2023, 2024, it started to go up, and that's because counties started getting more money from the state to be able to do some of this prevention work. So that's why inspections have come up. Right here on the photos, you can see on the bottom right, that's an inspector just looking at the boats. You've probably seen this if you've gone into the lakes. And on the left side, this is a decontamination. So we have these boats throughout the open water season. Enforcement, this can also be part of prevention. So the Minnesota statutes and administrative rules is kind of what our enforcement program follows. It's for there to be management, there needs to be permits required in public water access. And I'm going to talk, and for this is if you have an invasive species in your lake, you need to get a permit to be able to treat those mechanically or with herbicide. And I'm going to go a little bit more in depth after this. Conservation officers can also issue citations. Now going off to the education goal that we have here in the Minnesota DNR. So we have workshops, we have resources and guidance. So some of the things that we have, there are brochures that we can give out when we go to events, cards. We have the invasive species report that we publish every year. We have calendars that we give out every year. Promotional items. If you've gone to the state fair, or tattoos are very popular. If you come this year, come find us so we can give you some tattoos. Kids love them. So yeah, that's some of the things that we do. And also another thing, I'm here giving this presentation, so that's what we do for education. So now going on into management. So there's early detection and rapid response. Again, so this is what we do once we do find that there's invasive species in a lake. So organizations can do early detection and rapid response. So we have different people trained so that they know how to identify invasive species, and they're kind of like the people that let us know, hey, this kind of looks weird. I haven't seen it before. I think this might be an invasive species. So they get sent over to us or to a local county program, and then we're able to identify them. If we do find that it's an invasive species, then we do start coordinating and perform surveys to be able to find them. Then our invasive species specialists, they can evaluate connectivity of water bodies and assess the downstream risk if an invasive species is found. They can also start posting signage. I talked about the infested lists. If we do find that there's a new invasive that wasn't there before, that sign gets updated. An example of this in 2023, there was a sighting of a crayfish that wasn't found there normally. And this was from a crayfish harvester. So they're pretty well known with the crayfish that they find there, and they found something that didn't quite look. It was too big. It didn't look like the natives or what they were used to. Eventually, we did find out that it is a non-native crayfish, and right now, signal crayfish, as you can see right here in the picture on the bottom right. And right now, we're in the process of classifying it as an invasive species. Before it was unlisted. And all of that happened just because of the early detection and all the management that happens with our partners as well. So this is something that especially some of the lake associations might be interested in hearing more about. So let's say that you have your lake and there's a species that you know is an invasive species and you want to start managing it. So in order to do that, we have to follow the criteria of Rule 6280. And that is that if a target AIS is found in a proposed treatment area, so if you have the invasive species in your lake, you want to treat it with chemicals to be able to lower it. It has to have, first of all, the area that you want to propose, it has to have the invasive species that you're proposing. And then once we get all of that data, our aquatic invasive species specialists, they have to go out and they have to do a survey to be able to see what other species are there. And that's only important because it's not just invasive species that are in your lakes. There can also be some native species that are really rare that could be in the that can be close to extinction, possibly. So that's why we have to take that into account that, hey, maybe we might not be able to do the treatment that you're asking because we also have other resources that we need to protect that are in the same area. So it can get complex, and that's why it can sometimes be difficult. For management, our aquatic invasive species specialists, sometimes they do pilot control projects, especially for those new invasive species that come in, such as star stonewort or when zebra mussels start to be found in new lakes. This is when we can try different things to be able to hopefully control it. They also do literature reviews. There's new research coming up all the time. So we want to stay on top of that one so we can make sure that we are able to prevent and control this as best as we can. And we also want to see, I mentioned kind of like I mentioned of those other species, those rare species, because of all of the changes that happen in lakes with the changes in the environment, native plant community can change, and some plants that maybe were not as rare they become more rare, and therefore we have to change them and we have to protect them more. Sometimes they make a comeback, and we can start switching them to a list, and we can start doing better treatments for invasive species. So again, every year, all the time, things change, and we need to be able to keep up with that. And you don't necessarily have to do that if you're a resident, but you can always reach out to us at the DNR, and we will be able to fill you in on what's changed. Following management, I already kind of mentioned that when people, lake associations, counties, when they want to do a treatment in their lake, we, as the DNR, the specialists, have to do a delineation survey. We have a program already established that we do curly-leaf pondweed delineations in the spring and irrigable water milfoil in the late spring, early summer months. Those two, you do have, they are present in your watershed. And they have been here for a long time. So we kind of just want to see the trends. People have been treating them for a long time. We want to see, are they effective? Have they not been effective? So for those two specific ones, that's what we do. There's also a point intercept survey. So that's also to see what other plants are in that same area. So this is what's done when you send in when you're asking for a permit. We have to go out to check that area that you propose and to be able to find those other species that might be rare, and then we'll have to adjust or maybe not be able to do that treatment that were proposed based on what we find there, based on if there's rare species or not. Another thing, talking about those permits, we do have invasive aquatic plant management grant program. So if you do, if your lake associations, if you do find that there's a plant that you wanna do treatment for, you can apply for these grants. So in 2023, our data is a little bit outdated. The grants were issued between $2,500 to $12,500. And 102 grants were awarded. Something that's new this year, we got that the money that we have available for these grants increased. So back then it was about 400,000 available in grants. Because we got an increase this year, that's up to $1 million. So there's more money available. So please, if you want to manage your lake, this is available for you, and please apply for them. The local aquatic invasive species prevention aid. So this is something that started in 2014. Annually, all of the counties got $10 million distributed amongst the counties to implement their AIS prevention programs. This is calculated based on how many boat launches they have and how many trailer parking spaces they have. So different counties get a different amount of money. So this is gonna start decreasing, start in 2027. It's gonna be halved, but that's still gonna be continue going. So a lot of the work that gets done by our partner counties is through this money, this 10 million that gets given to them every year. Some of the challenges, and this is just not us as at the DNR, but it's also our partner counties, U.S. lake associations. You might also know of these challenges as well. On the right side, you can see all of the map of all of the public water accesses across Minnesota. So they're just everywhere, and we're pretty lucky here in Minnesota that out of the whole nation, we have some of the most money staff invested into being able to work with aquatic invasive species. But even then, there's just so much to cover. So some of the challenges are staff time. There's not enough staff with counties within the DNR to be able to cover it as much as we like. But this is not just on what's invasive species. This is just when we're working with the ecology in general. Time, there's, and I'm sure that your county coordinator, Trevor, can probably know this, is that you have to wear so many hats. In his introduction, he was sharing all of the different things that they're doing. So it's really difficult, even if you're working on it. There's like so many things that require your time and so many things that are important that you have a small amount of time to be able to dedicate it to aquatic invasive species, even if you do have some staff that are working on it. The scale of the management area, again, in Minnesota, you can see how many different areas have boat launches and invasive species. It's a big area, and it's difficult to find, and that's why sometimes, because of all of the challenges, you go to a lake, and sometimes you do find it early on, but sometimes it's been there, nobody knows how to identify it, and it keeps growing and growing and growing, and by the time you find it, it's already pretty spread out. So that's why prevention and education is really important. That way citizens know what they're looking for, and they can actually find it and let us know so we can take a closer look. Budget, as I mentioned, sometimes we get more money for certain things. Like now we have more money for that grant program. Sometimes they get decreased in other areas, kind of like the county AIS prevention aid. It's going from 10 million to 5 million. So that changes the budget for the state, for the counties, and that's always a challenge to keep up with. Management tools. We are pretty lucky that we have the Minnesota Aquatic Invasive Species Research Center with the University of Minnesota here in the in Minnesota, and here in the Twin Cities. I'm based in St. Paul, so it's great that we have them right here. So those management tools, there's always research going on. There's always new things being developed. Because there's always new tools coming in, we always have to adapt to those new tools. Sometimes they're great, sometimes they end up not working. So those are some things that keep happening. And we also have to keep in mind that sometimes we have some tools available, and because of new research that keeps coming up, maybe those tools that we were used to before, maybe they're not the best anymore, or maybe they had been having some unintended consequences that we really weren't thinking about before. And awareness, some people don't know about invasive species. If you're part of this, if you're in this call right now, it's probably because you're interested in invasive species. You want to know more, you want to get involved. A lot of people are not aware. A lot of people don't know, and that's why education and prevention is really important. And that's why you yourself can be an ambassador. You can talk to your friends, you can talk to your family, and let them know to start thinking about these things when they go out boating. Hey, like, maybe you should learn a little bit more about these invasive species. Maybe you'll be able to see them. When you go to your cabin up north, maybe just take a crayfish poster that we've developed so that you can just, when you're out in the lakes and you see a crayfish, you know that in your cabin you have a poster that could help you identify some crayfish. So yeah. And now, what can the public do? I kind of already mentioned with it, but I know that you came to this call to be able to, hoping that you can start identifying some AIS. It's really difficult to do that in a call. Invasive species can also change really drastically, so it's difficult to do that from photos. Like crayfish, plants, sometimes they have more leaves, sometimes they have less. So I kind of hesitate bringing those up in photos because it is difficult to show. Sometimes, as you can see in the photo right here, you have to feel them, you have to see them, and that's one of the best ways to identify them. So what I recommend for the people on this call, and if you see the recording, is to go to an aquatic plant ID workshop. I mentioned MASERC, the Minnesota Aquatic Invasive Species Research Center. They often have those workshops available, and not just in the Twin Cities. They have them available in different areas within the state. So if you Google that, you will be able to find those workshops, because that is the best thing that you can do to be able to identify them. If you want to take it one step forward, if you're, for example, if you're part of a lake association, I really recommend you take one step higher and do the AIS detectors course with MASERC. Again, they do have those available in different parts of the state. Here in the Twin Cities, I know that they have them every year, and that's gonna really help you. They actually bring in some of the species. They have 3D plants and animals from invasive species. They have their lookalikes, because sometimes you think that you find an invasive species, but there's species out there that are native that look a lot like it. So you will be able to learn that there. Know which lakes are infested. So know where you live. Know if you know what lake you're always visiting, you're always going to. Go to the Minnesota infested waters list and see what invasive species are there, and become really acquainted with those invasive species. That way, once you're there, you're able to see it, and especially if you have it on your boat, you'll be able to make sure that you take it off of that boat, of your boat when you come off. Kind of in addition to that, take a look at the invasive species around your county, around your lakes. Look at the infested lakes around the lakes that you are, because those are pretty close by. So even if they're not in the lakes that you normally frequent, look at those that are nearby. That way, if they do make it to your lakes, you can be one of those people that are the first ones that find it and look at it, and you can say like, hey, I haven't seen this before, and I think it's this invasive species that we don't yet have. You can send it to Trevor. You can send it to us here at the DNR, a photo, and let us know. That way we can take a closer look. Again, we're pretty limited with time, staff. We can't be everywhere at once, so it really does help when you become more acquainted. Understand the Minnesota AIS laws. Sometimes people don't know that if you do find invasive species, that you can't take it away. Maybe you feel that you found something and you're like, hey, like I need to keep this, that way I can show it to the Minnesota DNR. Prohibited invasive species, you cannot transport them, you cannot have them. So even though sometimes people want to do a good thing, but because they're not acquainted with the laws, they could be breaking the laws, even though they were trying to do the right thing. So get acquainted with those, and that all of those are in the Statute 84D and Minnesota Rules Chapter 6280. You can just do coursework. There's all of these different organizations that provide webinars, such as this one. There's little booklets, there's books, there's so many different things that you can do to be able to find on your own. You can also do internships and volunteer opportunities with the DNR and other local organizations. Practice clean, drain, and dry, and educate others. So that is all I have. I do want to have some time available for questions, just because I do think that having that involvedness, having people ask specific questions, because I might not have mentioned anything that you're interested in, so I want to have enough space for that. I do have some photos for some invasive species that you can find in your watershed, so I can also do that as well, but I will want to open it to questions if that's okay. And thank you so much for listening to me.
All right. Thank you, Rafa. That was great. Yeah, and I like your point about, knowing the laws about stuff. I think about like terrestrial invasive species like buckthorn. Like, yeah, it's good to get it removed, but you're not actually allowed to transport it places if it's got, seeds on it and stuff. So it's those little nuances of, yeah, you're doing a good thing of getting rid of it, but you got to follow those laws and make sure you're doing it the right way. So as far as questions go, I have one right now. So somebody was wondering, is there actually a map that shows infested waters, or is it just a list of all the waters that are infested?
Actually, that is a good question. I don't believe, well, personally, I'm not aware of a map, but that would be more of a invasive species specialist questions, because they're the ones that do that. I'm more on the prevention side. So yeah, there is that list, and it does get updated. It doesn't get I think it gets updated frequent enough that like every year or every 2 years or so, it'll be up to date. We try to get it, we try to have that updated as best as we can. So I recommend that you look at the list first, because that's going to be, and if you Google that, AI infested waters list Minnesota, it's going to take you straight to that list. So I recommend you use that one. And just mentioning again that difficulty with where it can be everywhere at once, staff has limited time. And just to create a map and having to keep that updated. I mean, you saw there's close to 12,000 lakes. It will be such a difficult thing to keep updating a map to be able to do that. I mean, maybe somebody has done that, and maybe we do have it. I'm just not aware, but I do recommend that if you're interested to just Google that list because that's going to be what's most up to date.
Perfect. Thank you. I have another question that came in here. What are some of the invasive species and their corresponding ecological impacts that most interest or concern you?
Oh, that is a really good question. So I'm going to expand. That's a good question that I'm going to expand a little bit on it. So I believe that we have done such a great job here in Minnesota, and that honestly, other states look at us as leaders. What we do here in Minnesota is what gets adapted in other states, and something that we have done amazingly well from my perspective. I'm new to Minnesota. I've been in other states, so I know firsthand how well Minnesota does it. So the inspector programs that you have when you go out into the lakes, you do find these inspectors. You're aware of those. So a lot of the invasive species that were a concern before, I don't really see them as much because they're already in the lakes. Curly-leaf pondweed, erosion water milfoil, they're already spread out, and those were kind of like some of the first species that were there. And I think we've done a really great job of prevention. Not necessarily, we have not been able to maybe get rid of them. I think we're done well at managing them now and preventing them. So they're not as riskful anymore, and that's because of the inspection program. So things that get moved from lake to lake, I think we've done a great job. So some of the new species that concern me that I talked about are starry stoneworts, and I'm actually going to share my screen so you can see it. So if we're talking about lakes specifically, can you see my screen again? Oh, no, not yet.
Not yet.
Okay. What about now?
All right. Yep.
Yeah. So starry stonewort. I just talked about curly leaf pondweed. So that's been around for a while. It's definitely in your watershed. Erosion water milfoil. This is the photo of here. It's in your watershed as well. Zebra mussels. It's also in your watershed. I know that close to the Twin Cities, Star Stonewort started up a little bit in Coronis up north, but it's making its way south. So that's why I said that this is one that you need to watch out for. So Star Stonewort is one of the ones that I am concerned about. It's just because it's so new, and I talked about research. Curly-leaf pondweed, water milfoil. They've been around. So they've been around for a while that we have been able to come up through research for chemicals to be able to start managing them. For things that are new, we still don't have those tools. So I say that you need to be careful about this one and please get more familiar with it because right now we're on the prevention side. That you as a citizen, if you get to know this plant and you do find it in your lake and you're able to like, hey, I think that looks like starry stonewort. Let Trevor know, let us know at the DNR because that's early enough that we might be able to go out into the lake, find it, and be able to get it out of there. So that's one of the ones that I personally am concerned about. So that's one, and that's kind of like on the pathway that we're really familiar with. That's lake to lake. There's other species that I am concerned about that are not necessarily in this pathway from boat to boat. I talked about the pathway of organisms in trade. So think about aquarium shops, think about water gardens. So that's one that people are not as aware of. So if you think about goldfish, goldfish is one of the species that a lot of people don't know that it's an invasive species. It is an invasive species, it's a regulated invasive species, and that comes in through the aquarium trade. So those are the ones that I'm concerned about, the ones that people think that they're just pets, because when it's just your pet, you don't really think that they're an invasive species. A lot of times, people, when they think these things are pets, they think like, hey, like, I can't take care of this pet anymore. What can I do that's best for my pet? Like, oh, my pet lives in the water, so I'm gonna go release it into the lake because that's its natural habitat, right? And it makes sense. Again, it's just education. People don't know about invasive species. There's this new pathways that we weren't as aware of before. So that's one of the species. Talking about the trade pathway, there's a species called the marbled crayfish. So the marbled crayfish, that is not that is not that is a species that did not come from the wild. It actually got started by hobbyists. Well, we believe researchers believe that this was started by hobbyists that was crossing crayfish. I mean, you do this to get all of these pretty colors so that you can have them in your aquarium shops. So this species called the marbled crayfish, it mutated enough that now it can clone itself. So you only need one of them to be able to start cloning itself. And all of the things that I mentioned at the beginning of my talk about, hey, like things can reproduce really quickly. They can have all of those things that make invasiveness. This marble crayfish has it. Right now, it's not in Minnesota. And I say that I'm worried about it because we have found it out in Canada. I believe Michigan, there's been a sighting now in Michigan. But that's one of the things that people don't know about. They think it's a pet, and you see them being traded on eBay, Reddit, where there's no regulations. So that's why the pathway itself I'm worried about, because it's so new. We're a global marketplace now. You can buy things from internationally. You can buy things from Florida. So we no longer have to worry about things lake to lake from Wisconsin or here in Minnesota. We have to worry about things coming from Florida and internationally. So yeah, marble crayfish, it's one of the one that really scares me and I'm worried about. And just the pathway itself is something that we need to become more educated about. Thank you for that question. And that was a great question.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Rafa. So we had a couple more come in. So are aquatic invasives or land invasives more harmful?
That kind of it's a matter of I don't have the expertise to be able to say that. But I can share that half of my career has been in terrestrials and half of my career has been in aquatic. So I think I can at least talk about it. Um, I think if they're just different. I wouldn't say that one is more harmful than the other. I think based on risk, I will say aquatic. Personally, I think aquatics might be more at risk because we are pretty. I'm originally from a desert. I grew up in El Paso, Texas, in the Chihuahuan Desert, and I value water a lot. And we have plenty of land available in different parts of the world, even within our nation. But water is scarce, and that's something that maybe if you grew up in Minnesota, you might not be as aware of, just because again you're so lucky and you're so value your water, protect your water. It is something that the rest of the world doesn't have enough of. So that's why I say that if I were to say something, right now there's a higher risk for aquatics, just because if we do something that messes with our water, our drinking water, our fresh water, there's not enough. And we do need to do our best to protect it. Whereas for land, there's more land. So I think for land, we have a higher amount of buffer that we have more time, we have more land, we have more space to be able to figure out. And if something is happening somewhere, we have more space to be able to figure out what's going on, to figure out the game plan and to do something about it. Whereas for aquatics, it's so limited, it's so localized that we have really limited time to be able to do something about it. And once an invasive species gets there, it's really difficult to get rid of it. Yeah, and in addition, on land, you can access it pretty easily. You can just go, you can apply the herbicide right on the stump, right on different things. Whereas for aquatic, especially some lake associations are present, this is something that you have to put on the lake. So specificity, so when there's a rare species nearby, that's why it gets difficult because it's also going to affect what's around it. Whereas in terrestrial, you can get really specific. You can get to that singular tree, that singular plant, and you can cut it, you can pull it. Whereas that makes it more difficult in aquatics, in an aquatic system. So again, with my limited knowledge, I can't tell you like aquatic or terrestrial, but that's my view from having worked on both.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you, especially like on the land side, you have a better ability to kind of quarantine areas or something like that. When you're talking in the water, I mean, you can't really stop the water, it's constantly moving. And so trying to keep invasive species in certain areas is a lot harder. And it seems like your tool list of what you can use to control things is a lot smaller when it comes to water too versus what you can do on land, So yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. I
Yeah.
think aquatics are definitely harder and kind of, yeah. So
And I do want to add too that it's most likely also more expensive, just because the research for all of that algicides, herbicides that we use, they have to be really specific because you're treating the whole water, and also you have to use a lot of the material because you're treating the water. You have to deal with concentrations to be able to have enough in the water, and that's in turn you require a lot of the herbicide. Whereas on land, you can just go to the specific plant, the specific stump, and use like a tiny amount of herbicide compared to what you use in aquatics. So there's a lot of things that I think make aquatic riskier and more difficult to work with than terrestrial. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. All right, I got two more questions here. So one of them's curious about invasive species, plants, and fish. So are they removed, or are they, chemically killed and just left to die in place, or like how are they? What do you do with them? I guess is what they're wondering.
Yeah, so this is another added difficulty to it. It depends. So if it's a plant, it depends on what you do to be able to manage it. So sometimes you apply herbicide, algicide to the mats that are in your lake, and with that one you just apply it, and then the material just kind of dies off, and then it just goes back into the nutrients. If you do mechanical harvesting, which is different, so that one is actually grabbing, it's called harvesting because it's actually, you're grabbing all of that material, you're cutting it, and then it gets taken out of the lake. So it depends. For fish, that one is more difficult, and that's just because you have to require euthanasia, like what are you going to do with their animals. So you have to worry more about what you're going to do with the fish. And I'm not as familiar with fish. I know for some of them, when you remove them, there's some companies that, yeah, unfortunately, you have to euthanize them because that's the only way to get them out. And that's something that we, as in Minnesota DNR, we're trying to get to solve this problem. So once we do, because we don't want them to just take them out and you have organisms that are not there. So we try to get a law passed where it would allow us to donate some of the common carp to be able to donate it to like the Raptor Center so that zoos and different things can be used as food. So yeah, so there's more laws required on that side to be able to manage and do something with once they're taken out of the system. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. All right, I have one more question for you here. So are there any success stories from getting rid of weeds in lakes? Somebody's curious if you've, heard about good success stories on actually removing a invasive species and having success with that.
Yes. So I can. just because I haven't worked on this in a specific project, I can think of like a specific lake. They're out there, and you can definitely send them over to you. But I believe that the success that I can talk about is the success in the stop of the spread of invasive species. So the reason why invasive species became more well known, and because why there started to be some funding for the invasive species program, for the inspection program, is because these species, erosion water milfoil, curly leaf pondweed that I mentioned, that were the early ons, you all as citizens saw that this was a problem. And then you ask our legislators, our government, to give us monies to solve this problem. So in 2014, that increase, you all accepted, you all voted for to give $10 million to the counties to be able to continue doing inspections, to continue doing with this. And all throughout that time, the 2010s, we were finding a rise in invasive species spread. We're finding them in more and more lakes. We're finding more and more lakes. And just in this past few years, the Minnesota Aquatic Invasive Species Research Center did some studies. Hey, are we being effective? Are we actually stopping the spread? And the research does show that if you see a graph, I wish I had it here, but you see in all those years it was going up, going up, going up, going up. And just these past few years, you start seeing it slowing down and actually slowing down the spread with this species. So I will say that while right now I can't give you like a specific case study, I can tell you that everything that we've done since 2014, it is paying off, and it has been paying off. If we hadn't been doing that, right now it's hard to know where our lakes will be, how infested they would be, but all of that investment, all of that work has been paying off, and that has been shown by research. And that's all thanks to you all, because you all care about the environment, you all as the legislature to solve this problem. And that's something that we have been able to do. And the trends are there to be able to show that we have been successful in curbing that spread.
All right, perfect. Well, I just want to thank you, Rafa, for your presentation, and really appreciate you taking the time with us today. Thank you, Trevor, for representing the Cannon River Watershed organization, and thank everybody else for joining us today. A recording will be sent out, so watch for that email, and we hope to see you next month for our next topic on March 10th. So we look forward to seeing everybody on that one. So thanks, and take care.
Thank you for having me.